The DNA mystery of Europe's first humans that changes everything. Everything you thought you knew about the first Europeans may be wrong. Scientists have uncovered a genetic secret that completely rewrites history. For decades, researchers have studied fossils, tools, and DNA, trying to piece together how our ancestors migrated across continents and settled in Europe. It was believed that the journey began with modern humans leaving Africa and heading north. But now, that story is far more complex than we ever imagined. Recent breakthroughs in ancient DNA analysis have revealed astonishing insights, challenging our entire understanding of migration, ancestry, and the origins of today's European populations. This video dives into the secrets hidden in ancient bones and prehistoric genomes. Get ready to explore findings that will flip your assumptions about who the first Europeans really were. To start, let's go way back in time, to the Upper Paleolithic era, around 45,000 years ago. This was long considered the moment modern humans arrived in Europe, bringing with them new tools, art, and culture, or so we thought. So, if the first Europeans weren't who we believed, who were they? Before we dive in, comment below. Where do you think the first Europeans came from? The true identity of the first Europeans. Let's begin in what was once a certainty. Around 45,000 to 40,000 years ago, modern humans entered Europe, replacing the Neanderthals who had long called the continent home. These new arrivals, Homo sapiens, were thought to have come directly from Africa. For years, scientists assumed their descendants became Europe's early farmers and eventually the foundation of modern European ancestry. But new research says otherwise. Ancient DNA has revealed that early European farmers were not directly descended from those first modern humans. Instead, they descended from migrants who arrived in Europe thousands of years later, during the Neolithic era, likely from the Fertile Crescent in the Near East. That's right, the people who introduced farming to Europe had an entirely different origin. Let's dive into the mystery. Who really were the first Europeans? Researchers sequenced DNA from early Neolithic skeletons across Europe and compared it with both ancient and modern populations. They found that these early farmers had a distinct genetic profile, unlike the initial wave of modern humans or today's Europeans. Over time, these farmers interbred with indigenous European hunter-gatherers, forming a new blended population. This genetic mingling created the rich and complex ancestry we see in modern Europeans today. But here's the twist. Early European populations weren't a single unified group. They were surprisingly diverse, and what scientists found next would take them beyond Europe's borders. Analysis of ancient DNA from centuries-old bones and teeth. To uncover more clues, scientists turned their attention south to North Africa, where ancient bones held secrets buried for thousands of years. One groundbreaking study analyzed DNA from 9 individuals who lived in the eastern Maghreb, modern-day Tunisia, and northern Algeria between 6,000 and over 10,000 years ago. This research revealed a genetic lineage unexpectedly linked to modern Europeans. David Reich, a popular geneticist at Harvard, teamed up with researchers from Algeria, Tunisia, and Europe. Their findings were startling. Long before the rise of civilizations, some hunter-gatherers may have crossed the Mediterranean, possibly island-hopping between Europe and Africa. This was the first study to sequence ancient genomes from the eastern Maghreb. It confirmed that Stone Age populations in North Africa carried significant European hunter-gatherer ancestry, suggesting that trans-Mediterranean contact was happening much earlier than we once believed. Previously, hints of cultural exchange had been found in archaeological records, tools, pottery styles, and burial practices. But this was genetic proof of prehistoric migration across the sea. Unlike Western North African populations, whose ancestry was mostly replaced by incoming farmers, people in the Eastern Maghreb retained strong local ancestry even as new ideas and domestic animals arrived. They continued to gather wild plants, hunt native animals like land snails, and lived alongside the sheep, goats, and cattle they brought in. This suggests not just cultural contact, but also resilience. These people didn't simply adopt foreign ways. They blended them into their own traditions. At the site of Djebba, Tunisia, researchers found the remains of a man whose genome revealed about 6% European hunter-gatherer ancestry, a figure high enough to signal direct contact, not just distant shared roots. Meanwhile, in the heart of Europe, another ancient discovery was quietly rewriting history. The Zlati Kun skull and spine pieces. In 1950, archaeologists uncovered a skull and spinal fragments at the bottom of a cave in the Czech Republic called Zlatý Kun. Alongside the bones were ancient tools and animal remains. The bones were fragile. Restoration efforts used organic glue, which unfortunately made accurate radiocarbon dating impossible. But decades later, technology caught up. DNA was extracted and analyzed, and scientists compared it to 6 individuals buried at Rannes Cave in Germany, roughly 230 kilometers away. The results were remarkable. The Zlatý Kun woman lived around 45,000 years ago, during the earliest wave of modern humans into Europe. She wasn't just old. She belonged to one of the very first Homo sapien groups to step foot in Europe. Could this solve a puzzle that has long intrigued researchers? The DNA also revealed that these early humans were interacting with and mating with Neanderthals soon after arriving in Europe. In the Rannes cave, researchers found a delicate collarbone belonging to a girl aged 2 to 4. Nearby, they discovered bones from her mother. DNA testing showed that they were distantly related to the Zlatý Kun woman. By measuring the length of identical DNA segments, scientists estimated the number of generations since their shared ancestor. The genetic connection proved that these populations were spreading across Europe while remaining closely linked. Even more astonishing, the skull of the Zlatý Kun woman was nearly complete, allowing researchers to digitally reconstruct her face. She had dark skin and eyes and lacked the genes for lighter pigmentation, traits associated with the sub-Saharan African populations, which makes sense. This was a group just recently separated from their African homeland. The researchers also found Neanderthal DNA segments in her genome. By analyzing their size, they concluded it had been 80 to 100 generations, or about 2,000 years, since her ancestors last interbred with Neanderthals. This early hybridation was more common than we once thought, a testament to how interwoven these ancient populations truly were. The Yamnaya culture. Fast forward several thousand years. The genetic story of Europe takes another dramatic turn. In 2018, researchers published a study in Nature that analyzed ancient DNA from sites linked to the Yamnaya culture, originating in the Pontic-Caspian steppe, in what is now Ukraine and southern Russia. The Yamnaya were nomadic herders who migrated westward into Europe around 6,000 years ago, bringing with them innovations like horse domestication, the wheel, and metalworking. The study found that modern Europeans carry a significant amount of Yamnaya DNA. In fact, far more than researchers had previously realized. Before this, scientists believed that most modern Europeans descended from Near Eastern farmers who had arrived 9,000 years ago. But the genetic impact of the Yamnaya was so extensive that it redefined how we think about Europe's population history. However, modern Europeans aren't descended from just the Yamnaya. Their ancestry is a blend of three major groups: early European hunter-gatherers, Near Eastern Neolithic farmers, Yamnaya pastoralists. These ancient layers of ancestry show that Europe's genetic history isn't a straight line. It's a dynamic, interwoven tapestry of migrations, innovations, and cultural exchanges. And the story doesn't stop there. Linguists also believe the Yamnaya may have played a key role in spreading Proto-Indo-European languages, the root of many modern tongues spoken across Europe and South Asia today. What this means for European history. So, what does all this mean for our understanding of European history? For one, it shatters the myth of a static, homogeneous European population. Instead, what emerges is a story of movement, mixing, and adaptation, with multiple waves of migration shaping who Europeans are today. It also highlights how early populations were not isolated, but part of a larger web of contacts, journeys, and exchanges across continents. Thanks to these discoveries, we now have a far clearer picture of how diverse populations moved across Europe, sometimes bringing new technologies and ideas, and at other times simply blending into the communities they found. And the tool making it all possible? Ancient DNA analysis, a window into the past like no other. We're not just digging up bones anymore, we're reading the genetic code of our ancestors. What's next? Who knows what the future discoveries will reveal? One thing's for sure, the genetic story of Europe is still being written. As more ancient DNA is sequenced, more mysteries will unfold, from the hunter-gatherers who may have island-hopped to Africa, to the steppe nomads who helped shape modern languages. If you'd like to be kept in the loop on what scientists find out next, subscribe now, because we've got a lot more in store for you, and we're just getting started.